to more frustration in the world of the so-called biblical flat earth. Now, what else is it that they claim about this world of ours? One of the things that I frequently get asked when I tell my friends that there's still people out there with this asinine idea, if the world is flat, then why don't the boats fall off the edge? Well, this is where their giant Game of Thrones style ice wall comes into play, as well as the giant dome that they have no evidence of. The firmament, as they call it. The Truman Show style barrier of our cozy little prison made by God to keep us in his little reality show for his own personal amusement. That's right, folks. We're all stars of the ABC Heaven hit TV series Survivor, Human Race. So what does the Bible say about this load of crap? Well, Nathan's List has a section entitled Firmament/Dome. It starts, of course, with Genesis chapter 1, verse 6 through 8. Going to BibleHub.com and our app here, we read the NIV translation says, "And God said, let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water. So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above the vault. And it was so. God called the vault sky, and there was evening, and there was morning, the second day." Wait, what's this got to do with the big dome? Plus, between the waters to separate the water from water. Okay, I'm officially confused, and saying that while talking about flat earth nonsense is really saying a lot. Well, what about our King James Version here? Let's see. So, King James, "And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters." Okay, at least this one actually uses the word firmament. Let's see what the rest of the version says. "And God made the firmament and divided waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and morning were the second day." Okay, so according to this version, there's a firmament that separates the waters of the ocean from the waters in the sky, and the firmament is actually heaven. So when we die, we go into the firmament? But if we look up other versions on BibleHub.com, we see the word firmament gets replaced with just simply sky. In fact, the definition of firmament, according to the Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is the vault or arch of the sky. And there's a second definition, which is the field or sphere of an interest or activity. So the firmament is basically just another word for the sky. There's nothing that says it's an actual dome. Of course, the Flurf community will say, "Oh, but it has the word firm in it." Of course, if you look in the thesaurus, some other words that share the meaning of the word firm are pressed, concentrated, gelled, refractory, set, sturdy, substantial, thick, tough, and unyielding, all of which could simply just be describing the sky. So, getting back on BibleHub.com and looking at the next passage, staying in the first chapter of Genesis, moving on to verse 14 through 18, the NIV says, "And God said, let there be light in the vault of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark sacred times and days and years, and let them be lights in the vault of the sky to give light to the earth. And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, the lesser light to govern the night. He also made the stars. God would set them in the vault of the sky to give light to the earth, to govern the day and night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good." Again, the vault is the sky. The Good News translation says, "Then God commanded, let lights appear in the sky to separate them from day and night, and show the time when days, years, and religious festivals begin. Then they will shine in the sky to give light to the earth. And it was done. God made the two larger lights, the sun to rule over the day, the moon to rule over the night. He also made the stars. He placed the lights in the sky to shine on the earth, to rule over the day and night, and separate them from the light and darkness. God was pleased with what he saw." This one doesn't even bother with the word vault, as if they already knew that the original writers just were talking about the sky. Now, granted, the American Standard Version, the King James Version, the Webster's Bible translation, I didn't know Webster did a Bible translation. And strangely enough, the Douay-Rheims translation says firmament here, but again, firmament just seems to be another word for sky. So, moving on to Genesis 7:11, the NIV says, "In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day all the springs of the great deep burst forward, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened." Okay. Let's try the New American Standard Version. "The floodgates of the sky were open." King James, "windows of heaven were opened." Floodgates of the sky, windows of heaven, windows of the sky, floodgates of heaven, all just four combinations of windows / floodgates, sky / heaven. Oh, wait. New Living Translation says the rain fell in mighty torrents from the sky. So that's it? It just rained a lot? They were just trying to find a pretty way of saying rain? It rained a lot? No, that's not as pretty. The floodgates of heavens were opened up. That sounds better. That sounds more poetic. But this idiot wants to take a literal translation and think that there were literally floodgates and windows that opened up in the sky when it rains? If that's the case, then how do planes fly above the storms? If when it rains, then windows open up in the vault of the sky, in this giant dome, and that's what causes it to rain, how do planes fly above the storms? It doesn't work like that. You can't use a literal translation of these passages to mean that there is a physical barrier preventing us from flying over storms when we know for a fact that we fly over storms all the time. Are you going to argue that there were windows that opened up and it stormed this one time and the rest of the time it just rains normally like science tells it? No, I'm sorry. No, you can't have it both ways. It just doesn't work that way. Christians are always saying, God does not contradict himself. Well, when you take a literal translation of the Bible, word for word, the way you are doing with this idiotic list, you make God into a contradiction of himself. Next passage, Genesis 8:2 says, oh my God, I'm not even going to bother. It says it stopped raining. Okay, you can guess how it says it stopped raining. Go read it for yourself. Okay, what about the next passage? Job 37:18. What's this one say? You can join him in spreading out the sky as hard as a mirror of cast bronze. Okay, so it just looks like it's saying how God made the sky and it looks like a mirror. I mean, interesting that he would know how hard the sky is, considering he'd never been high enough to actually touch the sky and see for himself how hard it was. And if you look at other translations, they're about as varied as the shape of the clouds in that sky. The Living Translation says, can you join him in spreading out the skies hard as a mirror of cast bronze? The Contemporary English Bible says, God can hammer out clouds in spite of the oppressive heat. The Douay-Rheims says, thou perhaps hast made the heavens with him, which are most strong, as if they were molten brass. It's basically just more like the other passage where Job is talking about how powerful God is. What does this have to do with the so-called dome? Only the fact that it says the sky is made hard as brass, is that it? But others, like the King James Version, just says it looks like molten brass. It looks like brass, it's hard as brass. Two slightly different things here. The James Version is just saying it looks like a mirror, not that it is a physical mirror. So how do we know which one to believe? We don't. But again, this is Job talking. Job was not an astrophysicist. Job was not a scientist. Job was not even a philosopher. How much did he know about the actual sky? Did he ever fly up there to actually touch it? No. He was just being metaphorical. He was just being poetic. He was just being allegorical, which is what the Bible is. It's poetic and allegorical, not literal. Next on the list, two more song lyrics. Toss them. Going on to Isaiah 40:22. Oh, the flat earther's favorite, okay? What's this got to do with the giant dome? The NIV says, he sits enthroned above a circle on the earth, and his people are like grasshoppers. He stretched out the heavens like a canopy and spreads them out like a tent to live in. Okay, they've got to be referring to the second half of the passage, the part that says, he stretches out the heavens like a canopy and spreads them out like a tent to live in. Okay, so the canopy and tent analogy mean there must be a dome? Is that it? Are you serious? Most translations actually say the heavens are like a curtain. The Christian Standard Bible says a thin cloth. The Brenton Septuagint translation says a chamber. The Darby translation says like a gauze curtain. And finally, the Douay-Rheims version says nothing. Literally, it says nothing. It says that he stretches out the heavens as nothing and spread them out like a tent to dwell in. So does this passage say that there's a dome? No, absolutely not. It just says that there is a sky stretched out over our heads like a canopy, tent, gauze, cloth, etc. Like, or as. The two words in the English language that are used for analogies, metaphors, comparisons, not actual descriptions of something. And if you're going to say in this passage that because it says that the heavens are like a canopy or like a dome, whatever word you want to throw in there, then you also have to think that the earlier part of the passage where it says its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, you're saying that, well, humans are grasshoppers. Last time I checked, I'm not a grasshopper, and I'm pretty sure anyone watching this video is also not a grasshopper. It would be like me saying, you're acting like a baboon. Does it mean I'm saying that you are a baboon? No, I'm just saying you're acting like one. Okay, moving on to Ezekiel 1, oh no. Chapter 1, verse 22 through 26. I'm actually very familiar with this one. Spread out among the heads of living creatures was what looked something like a vault, sparkling like crystal and awesome. Under the vault their wings, and stretched out one toward the other, and each had 2 wings covering its body. When the creatures moved, I heard the sound of their wings like the roar of rushing waters, like the voice of the Almighty, the tumult of an army. When they stood still, they lowered their wings. Then came a voice from above the vault over their heads as they stood with lowered wings. Above the vault over their heads was what looked like a throne of lapis lazuli, and high above the throne was a figure like that of a man. This sounds like some really freaky fever dream or a really bad acid trip, if you ask me.
There's all these weird shapes, and it's sort of like, it's like a music video. What are you doing? What is it? Stop it. It's freaking me out. Cut it out. What's going on? What?
I've seen this passage actually several times before. It's a favorite among conspiracy theorists, particularly the UFO conspiracies. If you've seen the Nicolas Cage movie Knowing, you're probably familiar with it from hearing it in that movie. This passage has actually been used by several people to claim that the Bible confirms the existence of aliens. So why is this passage used for this giant dome? Again, the word vault. And again, each translation says something different. New Living Translation says sky. English Standard, New American Christian Standard, Holman Christian Standard, New Heart English, Darby Bible, World English, and Young Literal Translation says expanse. 4 different King James translations at the Douay-Rheims, English Revised, and Webster's Bible translations all say firmament. The Net Bible says platform. The International Standard says canopy. The Good News and God's Words translation say dome. Wait, what? Holy shit. Literally. He's actually got 2 versions of this passage that say there's a dome. Does that mean there is a giant dome over the whole world? No! Firstly, this is only in 2 translations of the Bible. All the other translations say something different. So he's cherry-picking a little, which he's been known to do a lot. And he's not done yet, trust me. And the entire passage out of the Good News Translation, again, context not content, says, above the heads of the creatures there was something that looked like a dome made of dazzling crystal. It doesn't say that it was a giant dome covering the entire planet. Just above the heads of the creatures. That's it. Now, waking up the conspiracy theorist in me from my youth, this sounds strangely like the canopy of, say, I don't know, a spacecraft or a flying ship, like what we see in our own planes and fighter jets. In fact, doesn't the International Standard Version even use the word canopy, as in, like, the canopy of a cockpit? So why do the 2 translations say dome? Well, let's look at the original Hebrew, shall we? The original word used here in Hebrew is a noun and translates to either firmament, sky, ductile, heaven, expanse, or canopy. Wait, so you're telling me that the word used in these 2 translations that they took to mean the word dome doesn't even translate from the original Hebrew to the word dome? So what's the Hebrew word for dome? It's either one of these 2 words, which translates to dome or vault. But, looking at the original Hebrew text, neither of these 2 words are present. Instead, it's this one, which translates to firmament, sky, ductile, heaven, expanse, or canopy. Seems like the people that translated this particular version of the Bible took a few liberties in their translation to get the one that they wanted, and not exactly the translation that was correct. Something that flurfs are very notorious for. Who would have thought, right? So, let's move on. Ezekiel 10:1 in the New International Version says, I looked and I saw the likeness of a throne of lapis lazuli above the vault which was over the heads of the cherubim. Again, we're back to the word vault, and the New Living Translation actually starts with in my vision. So does that mean this guy really is just having a fever dream? I mean, he does have a history of that after all. But that translation doesn't say vault, it says a crystal surface over their heads. Then we're back to half the version saying expanse, the other half saying firmament, then the two goofy translations that say dome. So this guy saw a vision of a vault, a firmament, expanse, a sky, or a dome over the heads of some angels with a throne of blue sapphire. Does this mean that the sky is a giant solid barrier? Absolutely not. It means that this guy saw a vision of God only knows what. Literally. We have no way of knowing if he is talking about the sky itself, if he's talking about a physical barrier, or if he's just talking about a spaceship that he saw with a dome-shaped canopy over the heads of the pilots in the cockpit. There's just no telling. We have to take it as allegorical, metaphorical, poetic, not literal. Especially if you're trying to claim that these passages are substantiating the claims that there is a physical barrier surrounding the entire planet, despite the fact that no one's ever seen it or touched it in the history of modern mankind. Lastly, Daniel 12:3 in the NIV says, "Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever." Okay, so now we're back to the word heavens. And if you look down through the different versions, it's the same story as before. Heavens, expanse, sky, firmament, no sign of the word dome. It's basically saying that wise people will shine like the sky, and people who lead others to righteousness will shine like the stars forever. That's it. Nowhere in this does it say that there is a giant dome over our heads. The funny thing about this list is that the majority of it is coming from the Old Testament, which is far and wide pretty much open to interpretation. Especially considering in those times, people could have been seeing things that they did not necessarily understand or know what to make of, so they basically just did the best they could to describe it the best way that they could. Mostly using poetry, allegory, or just use the best descriptions they can come up with and sound like a really bad acid trip because of the fact that they just did not know what they're looking at. The Ezekiel chapter 1 passages are a classic example of that. People have read it and said that the guy saw angels. Other people read it and they interpret it as the guy saw aliens. Which one is it? We don't know, and we probably never will. So can we definitively say that the Bible tells us that we're all enclosed in a giant bubble? No, absolutely not. Now it's on to the big show. The next couple of videos are going to be talking about the three major elements of their so-called flat earth belief and what the Bible passages in Nathan's list have to say about all that. It's going to be interesting to say the least. If you liked this video, found it entertaining, and maybe even a little bit educational, please hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe to see future content coming out. Thanks for watching.